Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? If I get low, just kind of signal me and say, pop it up. What I wanted to do, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with such a talented group of students. But I wanted to give you an overview of Lockheed Martin, talk about our business and operations, and then speak about corporate internal audit, and then talk about one of our projects we focused on recently is anti-corruption. Within our business, within the audit function, we use ACL extensively. And so we're out in front trying to push the business to use more automation and more technology in terms of their controls and evaluation of controls. So I'll walk you through these items, but feel free, any questions, just stop me at any time. So just a little about me. My current role, as I said, within corporate internal audit is to establish a continuous auditing function and grow the use of data analytics for the audit department, as well as for the businesses in the corporation. Within the environment we were in, the businesses, corporate audit has been on the leading front, pushing out the technology, getting the business comfortable. As he was talking about earlier, people that are accustomed to doing sampling and smaller testing and feeling in their comfort zone are not, sometimes do not want to adapt to the technology so easy. So I work in that capacity to try to encourage them to use the tool, and then we start seeing success from that. I have a bachelor's in accounting, I have an MBA, and several certifications that have gotten me to this point in my career, and so I hope I can share some knowledge with you. And you can see my variety. I started in public accounting. I've done some work in manufacturing and in technology companies as well.
Jeff, who were you with in public accounting?
It was a local firm in Georgia. I went to school at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, a private school, and so I worked locally with that firm. Just a little bit about Lockheed Martin. We have around 120,000 employees. This number is a little old. We have a lot, predominantly scientists and engineers in our business. We have over 570 facilities in 46 different states and 63 countries as well. So a very wide, very dispersed company. Our sales were in the upper 47 billion range the last year, 45, 47. And so we are predominantly a government type contractor, around 80 to 83%. However, our future growth strategy is going to be in the commercial market and international is our focus areas. And this just speaks to the diversity of the countries and operations in which we're located. Some of the different roles for individuals coming out of college and MBA programs looking for opportunities at Lockheed Martin. There's a large amount of opportunities in the technical arena. We have individuals coming in with the computer science, information management kind of degrees and background and have an immediate impact in the corporation. I have obviously a number of aeronautical engineers. Many of you may know the JSF program, F-35 aircraft is the largest program within Lockheed Martin. Huge program. It's amazing if you ever get a chance to see a tour, look at the operations, try to do that because the complexity of putting together an aircraft as amazing as F-35 is just mind-boggling. And obviously we have finance and accounting, very strong opportunities there within the corporation. One of the good things that within Lockheed Martin, like many other companies, there's leadership development programs that are available. So individuals that come into Lockheed Martin within a couple of years may be identified and selected for a leadership development opportunity. This gives you exposure to rotate to different parts of the business over a 2-year process to get you wider visibility and exposure to the corporation. And the one thing we do within internal audit is we look at those individuals that are rotating through the leadership development to have an opportunity to come within corporate internal audit and share their knowledge and what they've gained over that period as well. So some of these slides they are leaving, so I've got to look and see their automation in here. But this just points to the opportunities that you may see, you may want, in terms of your career growth. Obviously, there's supply chain management is huge within Lockheed Martin. We have thousands of suppliers we have to work with that are focused on delivering products for all of our programs, including the F-35. And then we have great roles and opportunities within the economics and communications areas as well. One thing that is a really good opportunity for a lot of students and individuals looking to transition into Lockheed Martin is the opportunity to do interns and co-ops. The corporation, reaches out, looks for individuals that have an interest and wants to spend some time working within Lockheed Martin while they're continuing and growing through their education. The program is very well set up. When you come into Lockheed Martin, you're assigned a mentor or a kind of a buddy that works with you over your couple-year period to help you get acclimated into the corporate culture, into the environment. So you feel included. Great diversity within Lockheed Martin. I can say that about the great talent that we have within the corporation.
Please do ask questions about the career stuff. If it's something that interests you, or just you're comparing to something you're doing already or whatever.
And Lockheed Martin takes great pride in our social responsibilities. Every employee is encouraged to participate in their communities, from green efforts to just doing what's right. We do a lot of science and technology, STEM kind of activities at local schools, trying to promote the growth and interest of students in science and technology. So they encourage that. They actually track the number of hours that the corporation provides. And it's an amazing amount where you see and given opportunities to volunteer and give back some of the things that you're learning and growing as you move through your career at Lockheed Martin. And I do have to comment, the ethics program within Lockheed Martin is one that's incredibly solid. It's just not, it's not talk only. There's annual training that's provided. There's doing what's right is the corporation's motto, and that's from the top down, the leadership in the corporation. I've seen individuals in the last few years as the corporation's implemented full spectrum leadership, they're really looking at the total perspective of the executive team and what they can offer. And if there's decisions that appear on the gray areas of ethics, those individuals, sometimes move on to other opportunities because there's such an intense focus on making sure that we can present transparency to our customers and to our clients that we work with. So high ethic standard is within Lockheed Martin. And while we all enjoy working and advancing our careers and doing as much as we can, one of the great things within Lockheed Martin is the work-life balance. When individuals come into the corporation, new hires, you automatically get 3 weeks of vacation coming in. Typically, the corporation shuts down at Christmas for a week as well. Technically, you already have 4 weeks there, and then other holidays add on to that as well. And they encourage you to use all of your vacation and time. Right now, there's a ceiling of about 400 hours. That's the maximum you can accrue in your career because they want you to, encouraging you to use that, take the time, have that work-life balance, and then perform well when you're back on the job.
When do I sign up?
Yeah.
That's not what you hear at most companies.
No, it's,
And that's what you guys want.
yeah, it is the work-life balance. There's flexible work schedules. I'm seeing from the business side, there's kind of two pathways. You can go into program management, which there's program finance group that focuses on our interactions with our contractors and subcontractors. And then you have the traditional finance and accounting from the business management side of managing general ledger and accounts payable, accounts receivables, and those type of operations. And within the business management organization, they have what they call a financial leadership program. So they identify high potential employees, they get nominated by their management, and they select those to go through a rigorous training process where they rotate through the corporation. And you're giving huge amounts of training. That's one of the great things about Lockheed Martin. Within the corporate audit function, I speak to some of the things we do, but in the business as well, the new leaders in management, they just don't kind of toss you out there and expect you to do it. They've got some really refined processes around program management, business management. They have what's called the BMI, Business Management Institute. And so you're given those opportunities to gain further knowledge about corporate balance sheet and financial structure of the corporation. For you, excuse me, for you now, education assistance is a really nice thing. Lockheed Martin still does that. And then the mentoring, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge benefit. You can look within the human resources system if you're looking for a mentor, or if you want to be a mentor, you can do that as well. And so you can find pretty much any kind of skill set to kind of offset, help build your network of professionals in the corporation. So hopefully, as you're starting to get a taste of why I've been in Lockheed Martin for 19 years now. I've looked at other corporations, but I really haven't found anyone that has the whole package. And to me, Lockheed Martin does, and that's why my job still challenges me every day. And so that's kind of some information I wanted to share with you. Obviously, you can go to the website and get more information. At the end of the session, I have some brochures that our HR group sent. Feel free to take one of those. It gives you more details. And you can even contact me if you have any questions. After this session, you'll have to talk to me anytime. So I wanted to go from there, transition into telling you, giving you some information about our corporate audit function. Eric Sanchak is our Vice President of Corporate Audit, and Gary Gaylord is the Director. What we have set up is those two positions, Vice President and Director, are rotation positions. So about every 2 years, we will get new leadership into the department. So because of that, there's a need to have defined processes, repeatable processes, and a depth of bench strength from the management team below, and then team leads that work and represent each of the various functions. So Eric's been in his position for about 2 years now, so we're anticipating he'll be moving on to another higher level opportunity. They take high potentials in the corporation and give them this exposure to corporate audit because of what it can do. You get visibility across the corporation, a lot more broader than some people have been able to have in their career to this point. My group my leader is Vanessa Brown under the IT function. And you can see we have a governance focus, IT programs, finance, and then we have Christine Strom is over the systems and services function. And they basically maintain our audit management system, stay in touch with the IIA, PCAOB, various updates and policies that are happening out in the industry. And you'll also notice Scott Williams, the director. He's our director of enterprise risk management corporation. So he works and facilitates putting together the enterprise EMAP that we've developed in corporations. And we also report into the CFO, who is currently Bruce Tanner. This was a change about a year ago. Previously, we were reporting into the Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and we've transitioned back to the financial CFO.
Jeff, is the rotation for the other levels, the below the director levels, do they rotate the same 3 years? Does everyone rotate out for 3 years, or do you have some stability with people that stay?
And I've got another chart right here. Let me see if I can pull it up to address your question. The manager level below the director and vice president are a little more static. They are staying somewhere in the 3 to 5 year range, so you have some continuity as you have the leadership leaving. I would say each of those managers there probably have been in their position now from the 4 to 5 year range. And then below the audit managers, there's multiple team leads that are identified, and those are rotational positions as well. So within finance, IT, we have engineers that come in, then we go to the program function. After their training, about 12 months, they take on a team lead role or a deputy lead role and start expanding their knowledge and leadership skills as well.
And how about, are there career auditors in your group?
There are.
Okay. That's okay, they don't tell everyone they gotta rotate out?
Yeah, if they're trying to do a 50-50 blend, I think they're maybe down the road, a 70-30 might be okay in terms of the mix, but they see the value. If you look, like the years with the corporate internal audit, CIA, you see we're about 25% right now for new, less than 2 years being in the department. And on the opposite end, there are around 10% that's greater than 10 years. So you have people like myself and several others in the group that have specialized knowledge, whether it's governance or environmental safety and health. Some of those individuals with specific skills that truly enjoy corporate internal audit. They are given an opportunity to stay. There's no forcing out, and it's all you have to perform. It's there's expectation that you continue to grow, to challenge yourself, and to develop new skills and abilities, and to stay solid. So you can't just sit in place. These 4 auditors are top notch. I think they could go out to many companies and move into director positions. And they're just that talented. So we have a good mix here. Our goal is to be 50-50 in terms of floor and rotation. You can see we have 73 auditors in the department right now. We have 68% hold advanced degrees, and 55 of those have master's degrees as well. And right now, 31 MBAs. And you can see there's various certifications that we have. As I mentioned, we have the leadership graduates as well. They go through their 2-year programs. They determine. I'm still not set on my which business I want to focus on, and so they may move into corporate audit for another 1 to 2 year period. And just so the split of the auditors, you can see there's between the programs, because we're a heavy program focused business, it has the most auditors, and then IT and finance are split 14 each, in the group, and then governance of 12. And I think I failed to say this earlier. Within our business, we have 5 lines of business. We have the space operations, so we do working on satellites. I was just touring their facility a couple weeks ago, and there's a GPS-3 that's just amazing in terms of some advancement that they're going to have in terms of satellites. We have missiles and fire control business that's focused out of Texas and works out of Orlando. And we have a mission systems business that's based out of in the New Jersey area, and we have aeronautics as well. Okay, so that's kind of some background about Lockheed Martin. And what I wanted to do is talk with you about the group that I'm specifically in and some of the roles and some of the activities that we've been working on lately. We have 7 people on my team right now. We're looking to expand this in the next year or 2 to up to 9 or more individuals as we demonstrate success in terms of doing some automation. We have about a 50-50 split between the rotational and the core auditors. So we're always looking to bring in individuals that are comfortable working with ACL or doing software development. I have 2 people on my team right now that are software engineers. They enjoy developing new systems and software and do some amazing things. And then I also have CPAs on my team as well. So in terms of training, we have within the first 2 years that individuals come into the department, we have an audit development curriculum. There's 3 primary courses. Your first day on the job, you come for 5 days of training. It gives you exposure to the audit system in terms of documentation, understanding overall corporation, policies, and kind of your role as a corporate internal auditor. And then 6 months later, you attend an ADC 201 course, where they're preparing you to become a deputy lead or a lead on assignments. So you get that next level of reviewing work papers, looking at projects, developing risk assessments, doing planning memos, preparing you to help take that next step in your career growth. And then about 18 months into the program, there's a level 3 course. And in that course, you're given soft skills training. They videotape you presenting. An executive coach comes in during that session, gives you feedback about your trainings, your presentation style, and helps you to develop more skills. That can get you ready at the end of the 2-year period. If you're ready to move into the business, it gives you an opportunity to be fresh with your skills for that. And because of the nature of our rotation, we've recently developed some of our own ACL training, things that we specifically do. And it's kind of a quick start, jump start, rather than sending individuals to ADC 101 or 105 in the intermediate. And so we've used the knowledge we've gained over the last few years to build those modules. And we have about, it takes about 3.5 to 4 days. You can bring someone in that has a technology background, show them ACL, get them familiar with the terminology, and then start addressing the functions. And then kind of work from there in terms of the scripting. I just wanted to show this because this kind of speaks to how corporate internal audit has changed over the last few years. Back in 2005, we started, we just had really one person as the concept of doing data analysis and data mining caught on. We started expanding over the years by adding and focusing on core audit engagements, using ACL in the business. Where we're at today, 2013, we have 7 people, as I mentioned. We're looking to grow next year, hopefully, to 9 people on the team. We have access to more than 40 systems right now in terms of where we can connect to the data and start doing some kind of analysis. And we're starting to build toolkits. One of my goals is over the next couple of years is to touch every internal audit project that's conducted, whether it's program, finance, IT, or governance. I want to have some data analytic component to that. And so we're kind of moving in that direction. Which within Lockheed Martin is, we have a huge variety of systems. We're moving towards an SAP shop. So by 2015, we should be SAP. However, we're doing a number of acquisitions in the international arena. So we constantly have to look and see, are we getting new systems and new technology that we have to manage in our function. And on the top there, predictive analytics, this is an area that we're starting to work on. We've got a project that we're going to focus on later this year. It's going to be risk-based predictive analytics, where we take the data from all these different systems that we have, kind of push it into kind of a warehouse, and start looking to see what is the data telling us. Can we predict any scenarios or situations where there's increased exposure in the corporation? And it's kind of, if you've been reading about big data or studying big data, it's along those lines. And to me, I was just at a conference this week, at the Certified Fraud Examiner Conference, and this was one of the largest topics, was predictive analytics and big data. I think what I was hearing is that the businesses don't really have their arms around what they can do with the data or how to use it. Some of the larger companies like Google, they may have that, Amazon, they've got that kind of skill set. But there's a lot of corporations that are hungry and needing individuals that can demonstrate skills in terms of using big data to generate analytics. So keep that in mind as you're kind of building your knowledge.
Joe, could you comment on maybe just give an example of predictive analytics, just so people can, we haven't really covered that yet. And I just wanted to talk about later. Either an example and maybe your definition of big data, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, for us, some of the areas we've kind of looked at, we started looking at ethics information, to be honest, labor data. So we have, with the programs we support, there's a lot of need to track our time closely. We're building the government, our customer, and so we want to try to see, push our data together from programs that we're working for and supporting, for individuals that are reading those, for people that may be in leadership positions that have higher levels of access rights and ability within systems like the general ledger. If you combine all of those elements together, can it give you some kind of perspective if you look at historical data for maybe the last 12, 24 months? Can it start telling you some pictures of things that may be about to occur or some exposures that the business may be seeing? For instance, if you have in the P2P or procurement world, we've had some suppliers, because of sequestration, there's questions about, funding and concerns about suppliers, can they maintain until the government sets their budgets? And so it would give us an ability to look at those commitments we've made to those suppliers, to look at the history of spend with them, to determine, are there any risks that may increase based on need and lead times where they need to provide various commitments to the corporation. So we're trying to firm it up right now in terms of what our first step is going to be. But for me, in Lockheed Martin, we're going to do labor is kind of what I'm leaning to right now. And so I wanted to combine the elements of looking at labor charging various programs, mix in the factor of you have an increase or decrease in business, are you bringing new acquisitions, and does that increase risk? And is it more aeronautics or is it electronics, municipal fire control? In terms of where you might have the exposure, you can kind of help you focus in on your areas where you need to develop some tests or analytics or suggest possibly an audit project. Does that help?
Yeah. And then big data is just the whole, all the massive data.
It is. It's used. They talk terror.
You'll hear that term a lot, big data and the cloud, and make sure you know how that ties.
Yeah, that's. As I was at the conference this week, it is clear to me there's a lot of people, their eyes kind of get, oh no, how do we handle this, or what do we do with all this data? And in fact, even within Lockheed Martin, there's one line of our business is starting to develop big data analytics for their customers. So we support contracts. It could be the FBI, things, other government entities that we support, and can they help the customer harness all of that data that they're getting? When you talk government programs like Medicare, in Medicaid, you have government benefits that individuals may be receiving. Are they taking advantage of that? Should you look for individuals misusing Social Security numbers and various things like that? So huge elements, but the big data is just essentially all the information you have coming in from all your different data sources, whether it's coming through the Facebook, social media, emails, content. Can you scrape your emails and gather information that might predict whether fraud might be occurring or in process? And I know Ernst & Young is doing some activities around that right now. They can go back and they've shown, once they've studied fraud, they can trace it back to elements of communication in emails, and so they're focused on that element of big data. So big data is a huge topic that is more than just the social media. It's a combination of the different elements of all your data sets, whether it's financial, from your customers, or from your employees.
How would that work exactly? Because I imagine, like, for people that are communicating via email, you're not going to be like, well, let's commit fraud. Is it just that, like, people who normally wouldn't should be communicating with each other, or things like that?
You develop some relationships. You look in a group and start to build some factors around who typically communicates with you. It won't be the person in a leadership role, and then you start developing text mining. So you look for keywords that might be dissatisfaction in their job, unhappy, or various words that you start tracing on in your text mining to kind of pinpoint and narrow down to the situation you're looking at. So if I was concerned, one of the things that I've been looking at lately is intellectual property. So people that might be leaving the corporation, do they just pop in a data, a thumb drive and download lots of information to get to our competitors? And so if you start looking at someone that might have turned in their notice, they may be given 2 weeks or 4 weeks, do you want to have some analytics to kind of do some text mining around messages that may be going to that individual? Are they talking with outside companies in terms of their email distributions? Are they using keywords that might suggest that they're misusing the data? And so it's all about text mining and your keywords that you identify and try to do your parameter kind of test to help you focus on and identify where things may be going on.
Maybe another question. When in regards to predictive
Real loud, say it loud.
in regards to predictive analytics, is it a certain entity by itself, or is it built off of the other components that you have listed in your chart there?
For us, we're doing this within the corporate audit function. I'm going to build the predictive analytics based on our audit data warehouse. But in our business, I was just in a meeting a couple of days ago. They're starting to kick off how the different programs can interact with their customers to build big data solutions. So in that case, we may have some of our government partners that we work with. If they're capturing information around security clearances or information around benefits that we provided to citizens, how can they track and evaluate in an automated fashion that information? So it's kind of within our audit group, we have our own kind of big data predictive work, but there's also solutions that are being developed in business that they can sell to their customers.
Good question.
So, and one of the areas too, I think I may have another chart on that is really big is data visualization. And I'm not sure if you're addressing that within your programs right now. And I saw some of the things you have. And that is a huge need as well. There's many companies, their audit and compliance functions that are struggling with this. What solution do you go to? SAP, is developing some in-memory kind of analytics as well. You may be studying about HANA and some of their technology. So there's some incredible things happening kind of out in the market. But in terms of the dashboarding and visualization, there's many kind of solutions out there. But one thing that we've kind of been known for is developing our own solutions. So within our group, we're looking at Oracle, their enterprise edition software. We're going to focus on developing data cubes and using that to build and customize some dashboards. And that'll give us the ability to do real time. The vice president wants to go look at aeronautics and see, are there risk and exposures happening out in the business? They can look at the dashboard, do adjustments, and kind of determine, well, is it Fort Worth, that business Marietta, Palmdale, and give them a perspective and ability to make adjustments. So not only just static dashboards, but real time, navigating tools that you can navigate your dashboards is something that we're working to develop right now as well. Many of you are probably familiar, I know you study ACL. This is our setup within Lockheed Martin. We have the direct link software, we have exception management software, we have the AX core server that maintains our data. And then we are, as I mentioned, the dashboard, that's not ACL based. We looked at that for our business needs and the growth we see. I think it was a little bit cost prohibitive. So we're developing our own solution for the dashboard. We have some temporary scorecards that we're using until we get this dashboard up hopefully later this year.
Jeff, you're not using you're using the CCM part or just the desktop analytics?
We use the core server. It's just going to have a name group.
Yeah, they just redid it.
ACL Analytics or ACL Exchange was previously. So we have the desktop software, we have the core server that can run analytics and schedule them, and then we have the direct link, but we do not use this.
And I'll tell you, just that what you guys are learning here, you actually have more flexibility with your analytics with the desktop. We purchased the CCM too, and it was great, except it was all fixed, and you couldn't really change it. Where you can, and you guys are experienced with your homework, you're able to change these analytics and put different parameters in, and put nested loops in, and the CCM really can't do that well, with at least the version we have in our hands. So that's a good approach.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing I think with, for us, we looked at making some purchases with ACL, but we like the idea of being able to own whatever we created and then building that knowledge. And even through the rotation, people get really excited about the opportunity to use a tool like this, knowing that they can impact the department, but also their career and then where they may move into business. So in that 2-year window of time, they build some tremendous knowledge around ACL. They leave that kind of legacy, and then we have those toolkits that I mentioned where whether it's financial or IT, there's those scripts that are remaining when people have moved on, so there's a contribution. So that your knowledge and use of that ACL analytics tool it's not only an audit tool, it's a business tool now, and I think ACL is trying to go that way as well, look beyond auditing and see how you can use it in the business. And that's our message to the business as well, for you to establish monitoring of your objective, which is businesses, their responsibility. So this is just another tool that they can try to use and then rely on our expertise to help them kind of get a running start with it. Right now we have 10 people in my group that have ACL license. We don't train the whole department. What we want to do is be a feed so we can have analytics available. So if you go to do manual journal entries, testing, we have an analytic that plugs into an SAP system, it does an SAP direct link query, pulls that out, and applies about 15 different tests to it, and then the information can be emailed or notified, reported to the auditor, so when they go out to the field, they have that information. I want to tell you a little bit about how projects get on our plan, and I'll let the plot make sure. It's a little unique. I think we have an 18-month rolling plan within our audit function. It addresses all of the areas that I talked about, the 4 core areas. What we have is within each of the various functional groups, finance, IT, programs, and governance, you have a risk team. We have a process that's called auditable entities. So it could be an executive in a corporation, could be someone within the audit department, could be someone one of our clients that we're working with. If they introduce a risk or have some concerns, they're entered into the system. Those AEs flow to one of those teams. It's kind of an automated workflow. And then twice monthly, those teams get together and discuss these risks. And so for those, each of those risks are then scored. We have a matrix that defines levels or numbers, ratings of risk. And so we calculate and determine those individuals or the projects that score with the highest risk will be added to the audit plan. So we're always knowing, at least 18 months in advance, what our audit plan looks like. Of course, if you have management requests or emerging risk that just comes up on the scene, that can always take precedence. But we have a very structured process to define where we're focusing our time and efforts. And then once a year, usually around the October timeframe, our vice president announces kind of to the audit committee the annual plan. So even though it's an annual presentation, it's really an 18-month rolling plan where we feel like we've got our fingers on the pulse of the corporation. We've identified the key risk.
Do you set a threshold in terms of how high the risk is?
Yeah, for us, we score things like sales, number of transactions, the impact to the business, what's their risk, is it an environmental safety kind of concern, is it manufacturing related? And what we find in the model we developed, for us, projects that kind of exceed the rating of 30 seems to be those that will get the audit. For those that maybe right on the border, for some we say there's low risk, it's already addressed by some business, then we not hit the plan. We can put some in a monitor state so we can visit those maybe quarterly or semi-annually to say, has anything changed about this risk that would lead us to put on the plan or to do it? So this is kind of our benchmark. So this is just kind of a pictorial of that communication with your audit planner as far as establishing the plan. On the left-hand side, what you see are the influences, the elements that are communicated that will feed and identify the auditable entities. Our leadership team sits on the Enterprise Risk and Compliance Committee. We do annual risk interviews with the top executives in the corporation. Talk about some of the projects we completed in the last year, but also if you've got any concerns. What might keep you from meeting your objectives. So information that comes out of those interviews are kind of fed into the auditable entity process. And the same with external influences and other things in industry that are changing, that might be emerging, that we need to take into consideration. Some of our internal reviews. And we have also audit counsel. Those are certain individuals in the business that are identified, that are kind of like our liaison with corporate internal audit. So if we're going to do a review of their site, they help communicate with the business and the leadership at that location, to let them know we're coming, to kind of give us guidance on who we need to talk to within the business. They also can feed risk into the system as well. Then we have a structured process. Once we've established a project, we have RFCs, change control board, and continually updating the audit plan. This was just a snapshot of like when they go a level lower, like a methodology around developing data analytics. Just a simple little picture, but we always, we have an auditable entity that's been identified. We're presented with a project or a risk. We look to see what's the criteria and what does your corporate policy statement say, your policy and procedures, what should be happening, and understand the risk fully. Then we start working on building connections to the data, understanding the data, getting the right points of contact, and then we flow through the analytic to the AX core, which is the audit exchange server, and then complete the process through reporting the results. It should be exception-based. We're identifying, I'll show you some examples on anti-corruption, specific concerns that we have that need to be addressed in the business. And then we just continue in this cycle of development. We always want to make sure we have quality check processes for developing our analytics. We use standardized forms, and we can document what system have you connected to, what are the key fields that you use, who are the points of contact at the time that you did the review, what special notices need to be given for the individual that may touch that analytic in the future. We use some other elements of peer review, so if I develop an analytic and another member of my team, we'll look at it, read through the log, make sure it's doing what we intended it to do before we put it into production. And as I said, we have the analytic form. Right now it's just a simple Excel spreadsheet, but it's a way that we can build our toolkit and document the specific details about the analytic that we're working on. Because it's very easy when you have a wide number of people working on projects, 10 in our case. You don't always exactly know what other individuals are working on. This will give you a good running start. If you kind of got this lead information, the use of comments, as you're probably learning in your ACL as well, in terms of documenting at the beginning of your scripts, the details around what the purpose is, revision dates, and change management history for those scripts is really valuable. And this speaks to the number of projects we have right now that we're committed to this year. I'll talk about anti-corruption in detail in just a second. We're focused on doing some financial statement analytics, expanding efforts in this area, risk-based predictive indicator project, as I talked about. We're working on a tuition reimbursement project right now. We're putting some automation into this process. We've seen in the past where individuals have been reimbursed. I think the last time we looked at it, we identified about $30,000 where payments that went out that really shouldn't have been based on policy guidelines. So we've recaptured some of that money for the business. Records retention, we have media tapes, we have information going out to Iron Mountain or other repositories, whether it's paper or electronic. You can easily do testing with ACL to kind of compare your inventories between what's on site and what's the expectation of what should be off site. Invoice processing, we do a lot of work. We have a lot in the past on accounts payable, but we have one business that uses a unique system for their invoices, so we're developing some analytics specifically for that business. We look at the things like duplicates, where they're split purchases and payments as well. Asset analysis, we do a lot of some construction contracts or even development within a program. And so we're developing some tests around assets in this area this year. Compliance training is always something that's in every project because of the requirements and certifications that are needed to work on some of these programs. We want to make sure that the employees in those key roles have the proper training and up-to-date current training. So we have some tests that run and evaluate whether they are staying up to speed on their training courses. We get a lot of management requests. I would say probably maybe 5 to 10 each year. And even if they come into the program, generally my team will be tasked with accessing the data, developing some analytics. And it's an area that might seem a little mundane, but we get a lot of visibility to the management request projects, especially on the ACL side. When I did some work with the senior vice president recently, and they were just blown away within a matter of 24, 48 hours. You can connect to data, answer questions, and say, here's a test I can give you that will help you down the road, kind of do some monitoring. It's really, they're blown away by that capability, and then they start kind of reaching out even more. So it expands your visibility in the corporation by adding those contributions. So we've seen a lot of good things happen from the management request work. As I mentioned, data visualization, we're working on a dashboard. We're going to continue focusing on that path. And then audit team support. So far this year, I think our team, we're up to almost 30 projects that we've supported already. It could be doing some inventory analysis. It could be doing some kind of ESH or environmental safety kind of testing. It could be IT, journal entry testing. So, my goal, I think we have around 80 projects as a department a year that we perform, and I want to have our team touching every one of those. Whether it's from not only the field work, which we think of a lot, but from the planning perspective, where a lot of value can be driven around planning your engagements and developing the risk assessments to make sure that you're focused and have the appropriate scope for your activities. So I wanted to go into anti-corruption. I know you've been learning about that some today even, but I wanted to kind of take you through our perspective of what we've done with Lockheed Martin. Our executive legal team did some consulting, I think, probably several years ago, meeting with Siemens, with ACL, and Howard Weissman is our international general counsel. He worked with the leadership to come up with 27 red flags for, at the time, CPA. Since then we have the UK Anti-Bribery Act as well, which we now just kind of call anti-corruption process. Our goal was to develop a technology-enabled solution that we could provide to the business, and provide monitoring and then reporting capabilities for them. We have annual requirements to generate reports showing that we have not provided hospitality inappropriately. And so we're already facilitating payments. So all the requirements of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the 27 red flags touch on elements of that, the Act. And so our goal was to use ACL to help automate this. The business was spending days and hours looking at data from expense reports, from accounts payable systems, from the purchasing system, and consulting systems, payments being made to those individuals, to try to determine, are we okay? And so what we did, right now we have it established corporate-wide. We have each of our businesses. We have monthly reports that go out to the business, touching on these 27 red flags. The data flows through ACL's exception management software, which sends an email to the responsible individual that they have information available that they need to review. And so they go through the process, have a final reviewer set up so they can look at the input and the information being presented to determine if we have anything that looks inappropriate misuse occurring. We have hospitality that was not given prior legal approval that needs to be communicated to the SEC. And so the management relies on this process heavily. And we've kind of developed, I think we have probably about 150 ACL tests for these 27 red flags that covers all of our businesses. One area that we need to focus on for the future is international. Understanding when we have joint ventures, we have a lot of companies that we're forming. It could be in Turkey, Brazil, and other locations that we're starting to come up to speed with their businesses. What systems do they use? Is it automated or is it a manual process? And so we've got to understand the international scene a little more in terms of those joint ventures and even international bank accounts to kind of add to this mix. And so, as you can see, when you take on, we have thousands of transactions that come in daily. We generate red flag tests daily with the businesses that, hey, we like it monthly, we issue quarterly reports, so just kind of give it to us monthly. But we touch systems from accounts payable. WebFocus is our reporting tool, many of you may be familiar with. It can be assets data, it can be travel data, it can be travel reservations. Information contained in there, intercompany work transfers that we can touch from the WebFocus. So it has multiple systems. We have the company corporate credit cards, U.S. Bank and Citibank relationships that we have. We receive that data in on a daily basis into our audit warehouse. We have to look at things like visitors logs, even corporate aircraft log. That data flows through SAP. We capture that, look to see are they transporting any foreign officials on a corporate aircraft to make sure it's properly disclosed. We look at the international consultants database. Even within the human resources, we've added some tests. We look at special pays, individuals that might be getting MICP, which is management incentive compensation, and an out-of-cycle time. These are large payments for executives in the corporation. So if you see something in a pattern rather than first quarter of the year, that should throw up a red flag, something happening here. There's other things, smaller dollars that called SRAs, Special Recognition Awards, where you contributed on a project and employees are rewarded with, it can be up to $5,000, in terms of performance payments to individuals. And so we looked at these to see, are people getting more than one? Are they getting them close together? Is there anything unusual about those payments that could indicate that we might be trying to facilitate some payments or create some bribes within the corporation? And one of the offsets of that is our compensation vice president said, hey, this is really cool. They took one element of that data and are now incorporated that into their business operations. And they're using and doing some analysis of the special pay data that we generated, but we did it for the anti-corruption problem. So it's kind of had an offsetting ripple effect. It's been really good. The other interfaces we have legal, HR, IT, travel accounting as well, as you can expect. So just to give you a feel, we have 27 red flags, as I mentioned. This one is the 6th event within the corporation. We have a maximum of 6 events where we can post a foreign official. And as you can see, we have 5 business areas, so if we have a foreign official coming in from more than one business operation. And so what we do is we look at the expense report data, we look at the aircraft logs, accounts payable data, to try to determine do we have these officials occurring or exceeding that threshold. So we have analytics developed to do that. We give them a warning at 5, and then at 6, it's like this is a problem, it needs to be evaluated. We have a corruption index, part of our testing, but we also have like the meal allowances, whether breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Certain countries have thresholds in which you have to operate. And so we've designed our analytics to stay current with those changing thresholds within the various countries, and to test and make sure that our expenses and payouts for those areas of the business are in line with the requirements.
Jeff, do you run those, like T&E analytics, do you run them on a continuous basis, or is it something you would mine?
Yeah, we're mining those. Like for the elected officer, we do a project every quarter on those specific expenses. We have in our business, one of the things we did about 3 years ago is my group created a purchasing card and travel card. It's called real-time early warning process. It looks at all transactions flowing from the company credit cards and even travel expenses. And so they do that on a daily basis. They're running analysis looking for excessive cash withdrawals, for inappropriate purchases, vendors, and things like that. So they have that kind of running. So we just do ours right now on a monthly basis for this kind of approach.
You do the review per month. But even that creates, I think, that perception of monitoring. People, you know, I mean, with the opportunity to the typical Lockheed Martin employee be gone around violating T&E expense because they're just, you know, they know they're not just sampling, you're using technology.
Yeah, there's communication that's went to high levels that this operation is occurring. You get notifications if you've exceeded. We have a test that looks to see have they, in a 30-day period, exceeded $2,000 cash withdrawal for international travel. Because that happens. Some of our countries that we go to, you know, they don't accept credit cards. So we kind of monitor that, and we've seen somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 people in the last 6 to 12 months lose their positions because they were misusing their corporate card. So we take it very seriously as a corporation. There's an expectation that it's you're using the company's money when you're on travel. So there's a heightened sense of awareness that's there. We do have each employee creates an expense report reviewed by their management team, so there's that level of review as well. But yeah, it's the individuals notice they get notifications via email of any concerns that we have in the travel data or purchasing data. And the other things we look for in this are meals, gift, and entertainment, hospitality to those foreign officials. We started building, before we started doing this project, we really didn't have a database of every foreign official that had visited the corporation in the last 12 months. And so now we have, going back several years, captured that data. We started looking at how can we connect to listings of government officials. And I recently came across the CIA has a monthly report of the political individuals in high levels in various countries. And so we're starting to integrate that into our process.
I was going to ask you, how do you do that? And you know someone is a government official. That's a great idea. Then you're going outside of the web to get additional input for your analytics.
Yeah, so
that person's on this list.
I just came to know this recently that they generated this report. It lists the ministers of defense, high-level political officials in the government, and it gives you an ability, you can pull that into ACL, and start doing some really cool things. You know, looking mainly on name match, but still that's better than kind of nothing else. We have the OFAC list, if you're familiar with that, and the excluded parties list. OFAC is an Office of Foreign Assets and Control, individuals that may be debarred or suspended from doing business with the government. And so we test, we have that information coming in from the outside as well. The excluded parties list, same thing. Have they been, at some point in time, barred from doing business with the government? And so we analyze that data, we bring in this foreign official data to give us a better way to touch and make sure that we're not providing any hospitality to individuals we shouldn't or could influence a contract that we might not be trying to win. So this is kind of restates, but it shows you our focus areas for the analytics, our hospitality. What are we giving individuals that may be coming looking at our plans, or individuals that we might be trying, like as I said, to win a contract, where we kind of susceptible to paying bribes and trying to entice them to give us the contract over another company. Accounts payable, P cards, purchasing cards. We look at their accounts payable. You always have the risk of the non-PEO check request. which is an increased level of risk. So we grab those transactions, we do some text mining around the descriptions in the non-geocheck request. We look for any keyword, just suspicious words, and we try to grow that list as we gather information. We focus on international consultants, travel card, corporate aircraft, and even special pays within the payroll system as well.
So is there a constant surveillance within the operation? Only as to constant surveillance regarding text, when you say text mining, is it that any type of correspondence would actually be monitored by
In terms of helping out,
emails or any type of business relations or even non-business?
it's not in place right now. When we have an investigation, that's when we start kind of looking into emails and communication back and forth. But the corporation is looking at developing a tool and some tools that we will continue to monitor. We have a lot of sensitive information that needs to be marked proprietary for export control of sensitive information. And so we're finding that individuals that are managing that data may be sending it inappropriately without being labeled or encrypted. So we're starting some projects to look at that, and we're also looking at the ability to kind of scrape emails to see if there's any concerns. So I'm actually going to be in a couple of weeks where we're going to talk about the text mining and looking at emails, and is it feasible based on the hundreds of millions of emails that they go back and forth. But it's a good, very good question.
Just want to mention, there's Dr. Moffat here at Rutgers that does this. I don't know if you saw his presentation. He does a review on text mining and uses his fluencies and other things to come up with baselines to establish where there's fraud or problems. You might want to look at that and add that slide.
Yeah, appreciate that. When we have run our analytics, each of the red flags, it shows a transaction. I think for this last quarter, we had, for all 5 of the business areas, about 600 transactions that needed to be looked at for the business. Sounds like a lot, but when you break that out across 5 different business areas, a lot of it really is in the hospitality side of expense reporting. We're finding that people may host a meeting and they have 10 people, but they only list the names of 2. And so our system is saying, oh, there's a conflict here, I'm not seeing everybody listed this. We need to put 10 people, but you're going to give me 2 names. So we point out some of the things that really, if they refine their processes and enter the data accurately, then these red flags will be minimized. So they would just focus on, truly the exception type items. And so the monthly report goes out, they get the email saying, I'm going to exception management, look at your transactions. They review it, and it's second level review. And then with the audit function right now, we're going to put this fully into legal's ownership next year, so it's only continuous monitoring by legal. We are going to, right now, we're still kind of the final reviewer from a corporate audit standpoint, but starting next year, it will be corporate legal totally responsible for monitoring their system and process. We have some boundaries, guidelines. We've developed a white paper around this project that Howard Weissman, our counsel, uses to kind of, if he gets any questions from the business in terms of how it functions and operates, it gives more depth to this process. And so this is a pictorial of everything that I've talked about. You can see from the different systems I have over here on the left-hand side. I've made some of these system names generic, but essentially we get the expense reporting data, we get a lot of data from SAP. All that flows to our ACL server. There's a daily check to see, do I have any new data in this building, history that's being populated on the server. We make a decision, okay, is it month in, time to run the reports. All this is automated. And then it runs the 27 red flag test for all the business areas. It pushes the notification to the client, and then they have a quarterly review, and they're able to determine, okay, do I have any items that I need to disclose in terms of hospitality? I've had a proper review before it was provided to an official. And it gives them a way to have their arms around it in a much tighter way, very efficient, versus having people in the business just running around looking at screen prints, looking at receipts, and trying to understand do we have exposure. So it's an example of valuable use of ACL in automation. It's something that we developed internally over a several month period that we built for business. Some of the reports and the value that comes out of it, these kind of touch. I didn't really present the 27 red flags here. However, the things we look at are meal thresholds. We do look for gifts. Our executives going to Japan, taking something critically $100 value that might be perceived as a bribe. So we look for examples, and we find things where the executives have to be coached in terms of the protocol and what needs to happen there. We look at lodging, any impermissible hospitality. Are they traveling to Las Vegas and giving them tickets or kind of dining in terms of the levels of dollars that they're spending? We look for hospitality that might be being reported on a weekend that's not surrounded by other business travel, so something that looks unusual. We look for transportation, special pays, contributions. We look for charitable contributions across the corporation. Are we providing anything to a foreign political group or any entity that could be possibly misused and not have the right level of legal approval? We do test for conflict of interest. We actually test get the banking data for employees in the corporation, kind of bounce that up against our vendor master list to see do we have any relationships between employees and vendors. And we've actually found some fraud, in that area because of undisclosed relationships. And then we also test government watch lists, as I mentioned, suspicious orders due to text mining, and cash payments, and then whether foreign official spouses are included in that as well. These are just a few more. We do look for tax haven country transactions related to those. On Transparency International, we have a listing of those highly corrupt countries we factored into the system. Payments made to a third party, split transactions, payments where we have unauthorized increases for PO, which we're looking to see is there proper system information around why there was a change in that PO. The foreign political contributions and then payments to out-of-country bank accounts. We look at those to see if we can determine is there anything unusual. Is a consultant is asking for payments in a different country than where it's doing business. So we look for those kinds of transactions with consultants as well. Just based on hearing this little bit from what you guys know and study about anti-corruption, do you see any glaring holes in our process or any questions about an idea that we like to include and expand on?
What are split transactions?
Okay, split transactions. We have a threshold. It may be a cardholder, let's say, that has a $10,000 purchasing limit. We find a lot of times that they may make they want to buy something that costs $15,000, so they may split it into two transactions of $7,500 to get it under their spending threshold. And this happens fairly frequently. Sometimes the cardholder does it. In other cases, they can use the credit card company that they're working with to make that split for them. And it's based on your authorization levels for your card or for accounts payable type transactions as well. So it's an attempt to circumvent your spending limits.
I'm thinking about your accounting standards. I know that for the government contracting, we probably also need to follow ASPE values. I was curious as to how you guys incorporate those standards.
Yeah, the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, and same thing on the procurement side. We have heavy government requirements. And so one of the elements we have, like on the FAR, for example, if you have identified a fraud, there has to be kind of a process. And so when we see something unusual in this anti-corruption process. We communicate that through not only our audit leadership, but also the legal executive, so they can do an analysis and understand, does that have an impact? And it needs to be reported to the board, audit the board, also the company. And so we look at elements like that. We have cost accounting standards that we can follow. Taking contracts from the government, sometimes we have subcontractors, and so we have to manage how they spend their for labor charges as well as supplies and materials. So we have a huge enterprise resource planning system that capture those cost elements for individual items and transactions and total program spend. For each of our focus programs, the top 25, top 50 programs in the corporation, they have the 5-block charts they need to put together showing their estimated estimate of completion, their earned value, are they on target with the money spent versus the progress on developing something like a helicopter or a ship. It can be various things. And so we apply and have a very detailed procedure around the controller's office in terms of their expectations around transactions and documentation of those transactions.
So your group does monitor EDMS too?
Yeah, we
I'd
have.
like to talk about that. We're trying to get EDMS for projects to use.
We have a couple people. I'm not an expert in the area, but a couple people on our team. We talk about it tomorrow. We have some people who's phenomenal.
Anything you see him missing on there that you think could lead to some type of corruption? Anything it's pretty comprehensive.
There's some things that we want to do. We haven't, I think, maybe phase 2, like segregation of duties. Looking at key individuals in the business. Do they have, because of their access rights, whether they have access to, could they have access to payroll, accounts payable, expense reporting? They have the ability to create or approve those transactions. So some things as we refine these, I think we want to look kind of in that area. We have some compensating tests that go along around SAP analysis, but I think there's still some opportunities for us.
We did very comprehensive on POC. We'll show you that tomorrow. What we look at on segregation of duties. Another one that we did in some ways came. I didn't see it up there specifically, but I think you probably have it in there, is a vetting of all vendors for potential intermediary status. So, and vetting. So we have what we call an IFA number, it's some term, but what it means is that no vendor, whether you're buying pizza or flowers or anything, they have to have an IFA number assigned to that vendor before we'll pay it. And that IFA process is a DUNS review, an internet search, address qualification, to avoid, but it just is huge. Because we have hundreds of thousands of vendors, and it's almost, I'm struggling with it a little bit because it creates so much internal cost and stuff. I mean, and Joe's Pizza Parlor doesn't have the DUNS, and you can do an internet search on them, and you're not going to find anything. And we're only spending, $30 a pop there. We're not spending, so the risk, it's not risk-based enough. That's we can talk about that.
That's interesting because at that conference I was in this week, there's a company that was talking about, it's called VET. We use something called ExoStar with Lockheed Martin on the vendor side. So we have vendors come in, they provide information, it's bounced against done for extra to do that kind of validation. So it's outside of this, but it is that doesn't serve. I wonder sometimes how effective it is. But at this conference this week, there was a group speaking about VET. And they actually charge their vendors to come in to certify that they...
With that, and the third parties.
Yeah, and so they charge $50 to $75. The vendor comes in, there's an annual requirement, there's an annual fee for them to say that they want to do business with your company. And so they find that their model is people are willing, if they're going to make millions of dollars, they're definitely worth spending $50 or $75. So you have a way to get funding for the solution, and essentially it's kind of sounds like what you have in place a little bit. You have the business will get an email. It's Joe's Pizza, and it says, "Okay, come into this site. Tell us about yourself. Who owns the business? Who are the key officers? And here's the details. Your federal ID numbers." That's kind of vetted through validation of those numbers and information. And then the company has that information, but it's self-reported, and then you have the ability to go kind of check it. But I like the model that it gave the person coming into the business had to pay for the ability to do business with it. So in terms of help offset some of that cost in terms of the monitoring solution, and it was fairly easy web interface that they demonstrated. And I think the company was the ETTE, I believe. What was that?
And we even went as far as say, we have Cass Freight, for example, that pays our freight bills on behalf of Siemens. And now we're into this big discussion. Now, what about indirect payments? We want to vet the indirect payments because you can still be liable for corruption even if you didn't pay them directly, if someone else paid them something, and that's a whole other story. So who's an indirect, what defines an indirect payment? So we're dealing with some of that. But you can see how but you really want, because these people are smart to do corruption, and if you put in something real basic, they're just going to say, okay, we'll just go around that and we'll do this instead. So you got to, as they're doing, you got to anticipate, how's the black hat thinking? Yeah. It's good. Yeah.
There was recently an engineering firm in New Jersey that was involved with some sort of corruption where they were reimbursing their employees to pay campaign contributions to political officials. So it was flowing through bonuses to the employees. Do you have any sort of controls over that?
That's interesting because we do test. We have for the various award programs in the corporation, we have defined their limits and put them into the script. So we have things as low as spot awards. It might be $150. Then there's SRAs that can go from $1,500 to $7,000, somewhere in that range. There's an excellence award that's at the next level. So we have those different thresholds, and we put them into the ACL scripts and said anytime we see a transaction that's at or near that limit, to flag it, and then management can look at it to make sure it's had the proper approvals. Our system doesn't connect to, we see the payment, but we don't see who approved it, so we can't pull that part out. But that's kind of how we approach that, because as you just described, that's a plausible way for people to kind of flush money through kind of under the radar, without getting detected. And so we're trying to capture where that might be happening. And so far we haven't thankfully seen any problems in that area. We have identified duplicate special pays, and the compensation team went back and went, wow, okay, we messed up here. So it identified that. So our approach is kind of looking at those limits. Do we have an employee that's getting two that might exceed that limit? And is there something unusual about that? But that's pretty cool.